Vishupad Paramahamsa Paravatacharya, also Tada Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya. Chalanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shaima Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Mathuram Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Male Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai. Sabhir Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gold Premananda. Oh, glorious the assembled devotees. Glorious the assembled devotees. Glorious the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious the Shri Guru and Gauranga Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Staya Udale. Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Timamani Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavati Pashacha Asia Tarvi. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, those who have phones with the Bhagavatam on it. 3rd canto, 25th chapter, text 7. That's 325, 7.
325?
7. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Devahuti Ruvacha.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Ravanandam Tama Prabho. Devahuti Ruvacha.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Ravanandam Tama Prabho. Devahuti Ruvacha.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Nirvinanitaram Mumahan.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Asadindriya Tarashanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Ravanandam Tama Prabho.
Ravanandam Prabho.
Okay, who wants to try?
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Asat Indriya Tarshanat.
Asadindriya Tarshanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandham Tama Prabho.
Prapanandham Tama Prabho.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Devahuti Ruvacha.
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Asat Indriya Tarshanat.
Asadindriya Tarshanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandham
Prapanadam Prabhu.
Devahutira uvacha
Devahuti
Nirvina nitarandam bhumam
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Asat indriya tasranta
Asarindriya
Yena sambhavya vinmanena
Yena sambhavimanina
Parpandandan tama prabhu
Prapanadam Prabhu.
Devahuti uvacha
Devahuti
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Asat indriya karshanat
Asarindriya
Yena sambhavya manena
Yena sambhavimanina
Prapanandham tama prabhu
Prapanadam Prabhu.
Devahuti
Devahuti
Nirvinanitaram bhumam
Asarindriya Yena sambhavimanina
Parpanandam tama prabhu
Devahuti Nirvinanitaram bhuman Asarindriya Yena sambhavimanina Prapanadam Prabhu.
Devahuti uvacha. Devahuti said. Nirvina. Disgusted. Nitaram. Very. Bhuman. Oh my Lord. Asat. Impermanent. Indriya. The senses. Tarshanat. From agitation. Yena. By which. Sambhavyamanina. Being prevalent. Prapana. I have fallen. Andam pratama. Into the abyss of ignorance. Prabhu. Oh my Lord. So translation, Devahuti said, we'll repeat it in a second. I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses, for because of the sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. So you can repeat, Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. So we have the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Here the word Asat Indriya Karshanat is very, very significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and Indriya means senses. Thus, Asad Indriya Karshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We're evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body. And therefore, the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary, or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are not covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. So, again, the verse. Devahuti Raja Devrinam Itaram Bhuman Nasandriya Tarshana Ayena Sambhav Yamanena Prapanandal Prabhu. So, Om Gana Timirandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Meritam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. So, I guess we should tell the story. This is in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the story of Devahuti, Kardama, and Lord Kapiladeva, for those who don't know. That once upon a time, actually we can go back almost to the beginning, we had Kardama Muni who wanted to get married. Now, he wanted to get married not for the wrong purpose. He wanted to get married to carry out his father's order. What was his father's order? Anyone know? To have children, to propagate, to fill the universe. And his father's name was Lord Brahma. So, anyway, Lord Brahma told him to do that, and he needed some compatible wife. So instead of doing what many of you do, worshiping Durga, or, whatever, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, Lord Vishnu appeared before him. And Lord Vishnu basically was very pleased with him. And Lord Vishnu said, I already know what you want. So, of course, we don't want to criticize Kardama Muni. He's a great devotee. But he was so humble. Dainya, and humility, as we talked about. He was so humble, he said, I'm sorry I have this material desire. I want to get married. I want a wife who's just like me. Like disposition is the word used in the Bhagavatam. And so Lord Vishnu says, I've already made that arrangement for you. So I guess Lord Vishnu is the best marriage broker. It's definitely a business of sannyasi should not be engaged in arranging marriages. So I already have it, and basically he even told who his wife was going to be. He said, actually, Swayambhuva Manu has a daughter, and her daughter is really beautiful. She was actually so beautiful that when she would play tennis or whatever they played in those days, on the top of the palace, then one of the Gandharvas was flying by, and he looked at her and he just fainted. Seeing her beauty, he fell off his airplane. Not a good idea. And that's the bewildering aspect of the material energy. Anyway, so he fell off of his airplane, but at the same time, Devahuti remained very chaste. So then Swayambhuva Manu was going around, it's also his business, the father's business, to find a nice husband for his daughter. So he was going around and looking for a husband. And he was also told by Lord Vishnu that actually his husband is Kardama Muni. So they arrived at the ashram of Kardama Muni, and there was some mutual exchange of nice words. In other words, they praised each other, because Swayambhuva Manu is a great devotee, Kardama Muni is a great sage and a great devotee. And then Devahuti, the daughter, of Swayambhuva Manu was dropped off in the ashram of Kardama. There's no mention that there was a big marriage ceremony or anything like that. Even though Swayambhuva Manu had all the money. Sometimes people spend so much on the marriage ceremony that they go in debt for the next 50 years. They mortgage their houses and everything like that just to get their daughter married. I think the couple would prefer the money rather than spending on the ceremony, right? Better have the money. Then they don't have to work for the next 50 years. So anyway, so basically, because he was a sage, they didn't need an opulent marriage, so they got married. But the interesting thing is, about Devahuti, is that she was a Kshatriya girl. Ladies also have varnas. Varna means, the Kshatriya, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, based upon whatever modes of nature. And Kshatriyas, they actually live quite opulently. They have a lot of jewelry, the ladies at least. They have a lot of jewelry. They have just like last night they gave me a plate with, I don't know how many preparations, anyone count?
84.
84?
I believe.
Oh my God. And anyway, I'm supposed to be a Brahmin sannyasi. A little bewildering. So 84 preparations. But Kshatriyas, they would have hundreds of preparations and people fanning them all the time. They'd sit on their palace throne and they'd have these girls on both sides. Chamas fanning. Isn't it? You see like that? Yeah, and dancing. Yeah, the people, entertainment and dancing. So she was used to that standard. Now it's very hard when you're used to a particular standard of living to change that to something less. Just like you see in countries like India and other countries, people move to the city. And previously they were from farming families, right? They moved to the city, and you're not going to get them back to the farm. So oftentimes the devotees talk about instituting varnashram, getting people back to the farm. But basically, none of you could tolerate it. At this point, maybe one or two of you could tolerate it. It's just like, what? It's so easy to just get in my car and drive, go to work, go on the internet and everything like that. And then imagine waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and taking the oxen out. Could any of you do that? I don't think so. Volunteers? No. So anyway, so she was really opulent. Really. Swayambhuva Manu, the father of mankind, basically. That's why the word man comes from, or manusha. So, anyway, she gets married to the sage. The sage basically is performing austerities. And she basically has to serve him. And she can't live opulently, eat opulently, and serve him at the same time. So, while she's serving him, she basically doesn't even have the time to take a hot shower, Just like I was talking to the devotees who went to Kumbh Mela. And they were describing, that it wasn't austere at all. They were taking hot showers every morning, Western facility. The reason I didn't go, I thought it was going to be austere.
VIP.
VIP. Oh, wow.
Free food as well.
Fresh fruit?
Yeah, fresh food every morning.
That's a luxury.
That's because you're addicted to a sense of body. And they travel all over India, and everywhere, first class, 5-star hotels, like that. And whereas you have the people who live in India, the great austere people, they come to Govardhan. We talked about this last night during the Purnima, and they come on the back of a tractor from Rajasthan. There's like a trailer on the back of the tractor, and they're happy. they're happier than the people living in 5-star hotels. So Devahuti, she actually was serving her husband, and her body just became thin, and soiled in different ways, and what to speak of silk saris. Probably she had like bamboo saris. God knows, like tree bark. They said they used to make clothes out of tree bark.
Yeah.
Not the pieces of bark, but they would actually get these thread out of tree bark and make that. It was actually very nice. And the sages, Lord Ram and Sita and Lakshman wore tree bark clothes when they went to the forest. So Devahuti had to do all those things, and she did that because of her love for her husband. So that, important lesson, that if one has devotion, then even austerities which would previously be very difficult to perform become sources of bliss, right? Just like we know, one devotee recently went to India, and she went around this old corridor of the holy place. My mercy. Wasn't my mercy.
Visiting those
Yeah, it was a mercy of one of my disciples. So anyway, so when there's devotion and focus on one's intention, you can do all sorts of austerities. That's the point. If we actually are devoted to Krishna and Guru, then anything is possible. And there's no, as Prabhupada said, a devotee doesn't have the word impossible in his dictionary. As Prabhupada told us several times, one time when I was engaged in helping to produce 17 books in 2 months, and there's a whole story I'm not going to tell right now. Just recently, there was one of the devotees who I was encouraging. I said, I mentioned it last night, I wanted him to become expert in Java. And I said, you have 2 weeks. And everybody said, impossible. I said, no. Impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. Do it. So I'm sure he'll be able to do it. So, in any case, because of her devotion, she was happy doing it. Very, very happy. And for many years, she served her like that, and the body looked really austere. She no longer exhibited all of the previous beauty. She was still beautiful, but it was just like covered at this point. So eventually, she thinks, boy, I was also promised to have some kids. So she goes to she goes to Kardama Muni, and shyly says, we're supposed to have kids, that was promised. And also Kardama knows that was supposed to be the purpose of the marriage, to have kids. Because, that's one of the main purposes of marriage, to have children. It's not just some romantic fling for the next 30 years. So that was the purpose of Kardama. And Kardama knew that one of the children would be an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of God. And so that was predicted by Lord Vishnu. So basically, she approaches him, and he basically says, all right, but she says, that's not going to work. Look at me, I'm in a disheveled state of body. So then he pulls out his mystic powers, and he creates this this giant airplane, bigger than a 380 Airbus. And there's all sorts of girls to serve her on this airplane, and they're bathing her and they're feeding her nicely, and she regains her previous physical beauty. And then Kardama and they just go on a vacation for a long period of time, enjoying themselves. And after some time, because she is so immersed in the idea of having a child, attached to it and everything like that, and he's more or less detached. They have 9 daughters. And Kardama says, okay, you have some children, time for me to take sannyas. And she's thinking, ooh, you didn't give me the one thing that you promised, which is fearlessness. What is fearless? Fearless means not to be afraid of death, not to be afraid of anything in this material world. As we find described in the Gita, abhaya sapla samshuddhi jnana yoga vivastati. By cultivating knowledge, one becomes fearless. So these daughters, I mean, obviously they were just going to get married to other sages. And because of that, she would be left alone. And the daughters were not really educated enough to be her spiritual masters. And so she needed shelter. Not simply shelter in terms of food, water, air, light, a place to live. She needed the spiritual shelter. And probably wouldn't have been appropriate in those days and ages for her to just go out and look for a guru. Because she was always protected. That was the situation with ladies in those days. They were always protected. Like when Devahuti was young, she was playing the ball on the top of the roof. And it's not that she went to parties, like nowadays the ladies, isn't it? They go to parties to find a husband. Sometimes people ask me, how can I find a husband? I said, I don't know, it's not my business. My business is to renounce life, not to find husbands. Anyway, sometimes they give suggestions. So anyway, so she needed some instruction. She needed to accept a guru, and she needed to become fearless by getting spiritual knowledge. And he said, okay, I guess I have to stay around for a little while. You promised me, she said, that you were going to make me fearless. So anyway, so they had another child. And that child was Lord Kapiladeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when they had the child, Kardama Muni said, okay, I'm taking sannyas. So the interesting question is, if your kid is God, why would you take sannyas? I think that question is raised in the Bhagavatam too. Why would you, I would definitely stay at home, take care of God, the parental affection like that. But he just didn't want to get diverted into anything except because he was always meditating. It just no family affairs. He just wanted to be focused completely, and he understood that performing devotional service, the chanting of the Lord's holy names, the meditation on Krishna, means that you're with Krishna. Sometimes we think that Krishna is only on the altar. Right? I'm going to go see Krishna. Well, Krishna is in his holy name. Krishna is in his remembrance. Just like in about a week, we're going to be talking about Ram's pastimes. And Ram's pastimes are just like full of separation. I mean, it's just like, it's almost depressing if you look at it from an external viewpoint. And you look at Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, leaving his wife, who was 16 years old. And then you look at Krishna's pastimes, leaving the gopis for so many years, separation. But the feelings of separation, the chanting the Lord's holy name, the performance of devotional service, the hearing of Krishna Katha is not different than being with the Supreme Personality of God. Like we're hearing Bhagavatam, God is there. When you're serving, God is there. So Kardama Muni realized that, and therefore that's why he took sannyas, because otherwise he would get into a lot of different sentimental things. So he took sannyas, and then basically you have Devahuti with her son. And remember that her son is much younger than her. That's how children are usually younger than parents. far as I know. And there may be some exceptions, but he's a kid. But because he's the supreme personality of Godhead, he's full of knowledge. He's the Adi Guru. Adi Guru is the name of Krishna, of course, also the name of Lord Nityananda, Balaram. So he's the original Guru. So Devahuti at this point, this is an interesting verse, because she's enjoyed so much, you would think that she'd want to continue enjoyment, but she's burnt out. That's a euphemism for, sick of the disturbances. She's burnt out. She's trying so much. I mean, you see that happens with many people. In the Bhagavatam, you also have the story of Yayati, who got back his youth after offending his father-in-law. And he enjoyed for thousands of years or something like that. And after a while, he understood, I'm acting like a goat. He even preaches to his wife and says, we've been acting like goats for all these years. His wife's name was Devahuti, not Devahuti. What was it his name again? I forget right now. Devyani, that's right, Devyani. Another wife, Sarmishta, too. So anyway, so basically he says that we're acting like goats, and it's time for a spiritual life, and he and his wives go back to God. So that's one way of becoming detached. It takes a long time, because the more one engages in sense gratification, it's a problem described as like putting petrol on a fire. It just increases. Avadam Gyanametena Gyaninom Nishavayana Kama Rupena Kontya Dushprena Analena Cha. One's never satisfied. But if one has good association, one really understands after some point what's happening. Because you try again and again and again, and it doesn't work. And what is the definition of insanity? Anyone know?
Doing the same thing again and again.
Yeah, keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So that's called samsara. We keep coming back. Okay, let me try, like Prabhupada mentions, different types of bodies. So let me try this body. Let me try that body. Maybe that didn't fit properly. Want to be a king, want to be a Brahmin, maybe a hog's body. They have monkeys in Vrindavan. They look kind of happy. Isn't it? I mean, look, he has so many wives and so many little baby monkeys. But asad indriya, that's temporary. Because even with talking about the monkeys, that you may be a monkey and have so many wives, but then what you discover, this is actually monkey life, that one of your children grows up and kicks you out of the harem. Did you know that? And then you're left there like an old monkey just lying on this. It's very sad. You see that in Vrindavan. So we don't understand that. We don't see, the impending old age, an impending disability, an impending death and change of the body. It's all temporary. We build up all these different opulences, and then we have to leave it behind, and then we have to spend. Actually, before you leave it behind, you have to draw up all these things like the will, the legal will. I leave my whatever to whatever. I leave my eyes. People always ask me now, are you going to donate any of your organs? And, I reply several ways, of course. One is, who's going to want them? No person. But anyway, so another reply is, only if it do it. Devotees ask me this question all the time, should we donate organs? And I say, only if it's to a devotee. Because if you donated something to someone and they're going to go out and eat meat and do all sorts of abominable activities, that's not good. But to help a devotee, you donate blood, you can donate we know devotees who donated one of their kidneys to help other devotees. That's fine. So anyway, so you learn from experience. So there's two ways of doing things, of learning. One is by hearing, and the other one is by doing. So we have a choice. So we should learn by hearing. So by hearing these different descriptions, Devahuti is sick of his disturbances, even though she lives so opulently, then it should be an impetus to take shelter of Krishna and Krishna's devotees, like Devahuti has done. So she states here, actually there's a further verse, it's not in this particular verse, that she says about Lord Kapiladeva, her son, that Lord Kapiladeva is her transcendental eye. So that's called Shastra Chakshus. That generally we're seeing things through our mind and our senses, and like the eyes. But actually we should take this Shastra and the directions of Krishna is represented by the directions of Krishna as the way to see things. And then we're not blind anymore. Right now it's blind. Andaya tandaya upaniyamanas epishatantra purdami. Not only we blind, but we're being led by other blind people. And Prabhupada would often say, when someone declared themselves to be a teacher or a guru, he would make a play on the word teacher. He says, "You're not a teacher, you're a cheater." He would sometimes say that, especially when he was talking sometimes to Sanskrit people or philosophy professors. He says, because the professor would say, "Well, I don't know," and probably say, "You're a cheater. If you don't know the higher values of life, you're a cheater, not a teacher." So we should have teachers, and we are very fortunate in the Krishna Consciousness movement to have His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada is our transcendental eye, and we see the world through the words of Srila Prabhupada, which contain within them the saffron dust particles of the lotus feet of the Lord. So, in this way, we approach Krishna's great devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So, any questions or comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are two questions, Gurudev.
Two questions.
Right? The first question, when the Krishna started originating, creating this world,
Yeah.
why there was at the beginning there was no one, and then Devahuti, they started having kids and all these things, like from Brahma, Manu, and all these things.
Yeah.
Why there was urgency, or like what is the need of creation?
What's the need of creation?
Yes.
That is His compassion, because there were conditioned souls, which includes everyone in the room, probably, who really needed to rectify their consciousness. Because originally, as Prabhupada said, they were Krishna conscious. But Krishna Bhakti and Mukha, they turn their face away from Krishna. So where are you going to put them? What's the need of a prison house? You don't make a prison house unless there's criminals. Right? You don't think, oh, no criminals? Okay, let's make a prison house just because it's nice. So, because you had all these prisoners, us, criminals, us, therefore it's necessary to make a house for us. Or a place where we could rectify ourselves. Otherwise, we would simply be in a state of suspended animation. That means either merged in the Mahavishnu or floating around the Brahmajyoti and swimming like that. I mean, what are you going to do with the souls?
Yeah.
You don't want to be with Krishna in the spiritual world. Krishna doesn't want you around if you don't want to be around, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'll be spoiling the party. Just like in of course, in bars they have a bouncer. I don't know if you know what that is. You know, if you're creating problems, he's a big, heavy guy. He just picks you up and throws you in the street. Right? Because they don't want any problems in the bar. Of course, the bar is the opposite of the spiritual. I understand that, but it's just an example to help you understand.
It's a great example.
Yeah, so the same way, Krishna has this illusory energy. She just picks you up. Of course, she's not present in the spiritual world. Somehow or other, you're kicked out. And then you're turned over to the warden of the prison house. That's Durga Devi. Okay, you take care of this guy. Make him suffer so he finally says uncle. You know what I'm talking about, uncle? Sometimes the kids, they would twist someone's arm behind the back. Say uncle. Okay, uncle. I surrender. And so, okay, Durga's doing Adhyatmik, Adhibodhi, Adhyatmik. And then we say, so that's the purpose of the material world. To rectify us. Otherwise, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the garbage? What's the purpose of what we call a dumpster? Nobody would have a dumpster if you didn't have garbage, right? This is Krishna's garbage heap.
And just connecting with this one. And at the beginning of this world, there was no karmic reactions. Means like when we came to this material world, then we changed.
No, the material energy is eternal.
Okay.
It's bhutva bhutva, paliyate. Again and again, there's creation. Again and again, there's destruction. There's no beginning. There's no beginning. So yeah, there's a beginning of this particular creation. That I understand. That's described. But after the creation, there's dissolution, and after the dissolution, there's another creation. Bhutva, bhutva, paliyate, again and again. So this goes on and on. Yes, there are souls from the previous creation. And the previous creation had souls from the previous creation. And you get the idea. It's an eternal thing. It's hard to have the concept of eternity, because generally, especially those of you who are more educated in science and whatever, you know, or you tend to think in linear terms. Those of us who study quantum mechanics think in circular terms, and those who observe the universe think in circular terms. You know, like spring, summer, right, fall, winter, circular. That's how the universe functions. So there's a cycle. When you die, you're born. When you're after you get old, you die again. Then you're born again. Samsara. So it doesn't. It's continual.
I was just trying to make a connection, that animal bodies and then like human body, it entirely depend upon the karmic reactions and all these things.
Yeah.
And I was just reading the books to where I could find the answer at the when the not this I know it's a continuous process, but when it was originated at the beginning, what determined the animal body or the plant? Those
there were always souls. There's no beginnings.
Okay.
I mean, there may be a beginning for when you came to the material world, although it was so long ago. It's called anadi. Anadi means without beginning. In other words, you can't trace it out when you came to the material world. But still, the material energy, there's always conditioned souls, always have been, always will be. It's not. There's no beginning to that whole cycle. It just didn't begin, and there's no ending to the cycle. I'm just, in this world, we're used to things that have a beginning and an end. Like someone's born in this lifetime, and there's an end to the lifetime, Anyeshti. But, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Gurudev.
So, like Krishna's pastimes are eternal too. There's no beginning of it. It's not that when Krishna decided to have pastimes. He's always been having pastimes. So, other questions? Yes.
So like, Hare Krishna Gurudev, so like peacocks are the favorite bird of Krishna. Do they also have knowledge like us?
Peacock, that's a good question. If they're Krishna's peacocks, yes. If they're in the spiritual world, they have knowledge. They're full of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. If they're in the material world, basically, they just think about finding a peahen. You know the difference between a peacock and a peahen? The peacocks are the ones that look good. Peahens are pretty plain. So in bird species, usually the male looks better than the female. They're more decorated. The female's just plain old white. And the male, generally we just like the ones with the feathers. Peacock feathers. It's a good question. Yes, in the spiritual world, yes, they're fully conscious, but here they just have one thing on their minds. It's interesting. And why do they spread their feathers? Because they want to impress the girl. You see that sometimes. It becomes like a radar antenna. They spread out. All the animals are like that. They generally, they're looking for a husband or a wife. And so they want to impress the other person either. Here the human beings, the women's wear jewelry and things, mascara. But after they get married, it's nice. But I was just seeing about a fish. It's interesting, the animals like that, how they're engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, defending. There's one type of fish, and I don't know the type, but the fish goes along the sand. Anyone seen that? And he decorates, makes a whole mandala.
For that attraction.
Yeah.
I've seen that on the Discovery.
It's so interesting. Just a beautiful artistic design. So some ladyfish will come along and say, "That's my husband."
Same with the male bird as well. They decorate the nest and everything.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting to see the interactions and how there's a common denominator between all the different species of life. Imagine taking brothers of fish and thinking,
Oh my God.
I really got to find a wife. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. So, all right. So, any other questions? Good questions. Questions, comments?
Gurudev,
Yeah.
extension to the Prabhuji's question,
Yeah.
we turned back from Krishna, so we came
Yeah.
over here. So my question is, we are part and parcel of Krishna.
Right.
So how we develop that negativity towards Krishna and came back here,
Okay.
If it's a minute independence that God has given to us, so why we use that minute independence, thinking about to live against and away from Krishna?
See, I think you answered this question. Yeah, you said Krishna's given us minute independence. Independence, we have the ability. What is independence? Means that we have a choice, and we can choose to serve Krishna and choose not to serve Krishna. Why do we do that? We become. I wouldn't say envious of Krishna because there's no envy in the spiritual realm, but I would say more curious. Curiosity killed the cat, they say.
Yeah.
So, we see Krishna as the center of everything. And we're thinking, I'd like to try that out too. Not so much envy, it's just like, we just don't fit in or we decide something else. without that free will, there's no question of love. Without the choice of not serve Krishna, where's the ability to choose to serve Krishna? Then we're just robots, or, from Elon Musk's factory. What are his robots called again? There's a name for his robots, I forget. And of course, everybody would love to have a robot. Your robot to cook for you, and that's your future. But it's not satisfying because there's no relationship. The robot don't. Of course, with AI, who knows, the robots may rebel too. So that's another subject matter. But the point is that there's no relationship. It's not satisfying. And people are so crazy nowadays. They like to get robot companions, or they talk on the internet to Siri, or whatever, Google. Hey Google. No, I've shown that before. Hey Google, do you love me?
What did it say?
It says I'm learning to. But it's really illusion to think that is satisfying, that relationship. So Krishna wants to have satisfying relationships. People who voluntarily love him. And that's really the point. Not simply approach Krishna because you're so miserable in the material world, but approach Krishna because you really want to connect with him. You miss him. That's what Krishna wants. So, therefore, we have that free will. And that's because we're part and parcel of Krishna again. Because Krishna has free will. He's independent. And our independence is circumspect. So, in other words, it's limited. We can't be absolutely independent like Krishna. There's a lot of things we can't do, like create universes and other things. But we have a limited independent sphere. To choose Krishna or not choose Krishna. And also within the material world, we can choose to associate with certain modes of nature. You're responsible. Someone eats meat or someone engages in intoxication. They're responsible for it. So we've chosen modes of nature. Karanam guna sangasha sadasad janma jonishu. So anyway, we have to take responsibility for what we did. It's not Krishna's fault. Why did Krishna give me free will? I mean, sometimes you find devotees, they pray, Krishna, take away my free will. Let me surrender to you. That's a contradiction right there. Because you can't surrender to Krishna if you don't have free will.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's not right. It's just like Krishna just like forcing you to do something. Krishna wants souls with loving propensity, independent loving propensity. Okay. It's 8 o'clock. Yeah, one more question.
I have two thoughts in which I get confused. Number one is like you surrender to Krishna completely and you say he look after me. But other thing I feel like if I have a desire to go to Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, we need money, right?
That's right.
And is it like making investments or earning is like materialistic? Or
No, because you're using it in Krishna's service. Surrendering to Krishna doesn't mean you make Krishna your servant. Krishna, where's the money? I mean, there's one instance of that where Srivas Thakur was asked by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what do you do to make a living? And Srivas Thakur said, I have this 1, 2, 3 technique. He clapped his hands. And Lord Chaitanya said, what does that mean? And Srivas Thakur said, if I have to fast for 3 days, I'm going to drown myself in the Ganges. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, even if the goddess of fortune has to go begging, you always have enough. Because he had a big family. But that's an exception. We have 5 factors of action, according to Bhagavad Gita. And we control 4 of them. Krishna is the 5th. So man proposes, God disposes. I mean, so in other words, the way Krishna's arranged things is that we have to do something, but we depend on him for the results. It's not that we just sit there and just wait until Prasadam walks into our mouth. This is not going to happen. I mean, there are some exceptions. Like if you're like Madhavendra Puri, if you're in the complete Paramahamsa stage, which I don't think so, like Madhavendra Puri, he wouldn't eat unless someone just came up and just brought him the prasadam. But he was living very austerely. I don't think you can do that. Can you just live, just like Gorkashura's Babaji Maharaj picking up some clothes by the cremation god and putting them on your body? I don't think so. You have other needs than that. But that's the final stage of sannyas, which fortunately I don't have to do. That would be a disaster. Paramahamsa Babaji, it's just like, I like Parvajapacharya. Madhukari, no, I don't like so much. Madhukari is the stage of sannyas where you go to different people's houses and ask for one roti, and that wouldn't be enough for me. So one roti in each person's house, but the Paramahamsa or the Babaji order, Paramahamsa, is where you depend on Krishna. Krishna sends something, so Krishna doesn't send something, it's all right too. But none of us are at that stage, nor could we do it. So you just be practical. And then Krishna's providing it for you. Krishna gives, we mentioned last night, Krishna gives you the intelligence, the strength, like that skill set, so you can do these things. Okay, I think it's time to go. So thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's see, a lot of people watching. That's good.